Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel and welcome to episode 13 of Project LS400. So as you can see, the car is back on the ground, back on the wheels. We left off episode 12 with the car still up in the air. I did some cleaning underneath the car, got that finished. I thought it was a major leak in one of the gaskets, or at least in the gasket of the engine oil sump and the transmission. But when I checked, I found that some bolts were still loose, so I tightened them and let them be for now. Because the transmission oil has been changed and the transmission has been flushed, and I suspect the filter has been replaced, and that means a good shop at least would have changed the gasket too. So let's assume for now that's been done, and I needed the car back on its wheel because I want to work on a new project, side project this week, namely the I said this week with this episode, namely the remote control for the door locking and the alarm system. In the previous episode I replaced this panel. That's the surround for the ignition lock because of this ugly hole. There must have been a tag reader of some kind in this car's previous life, and the tag reader, I assumed it would be for an alarm system and a mobilizer, but I already started filming this episode and I ended up in some kind of mess in troubleshooting, so that's why I'm recording this all over again, hence the take 2 in my intro. What I did, and I can show you, one moment. So what I did already, I was in the procedure of removing the panel in the driver's footwell because I expected to find some wiring of the immobilizer and alarm system, but I couldn't find anything. The only thing I found, I'll get you close up and shed some extra light on there. There you are. Oh boy. Here's the ignition lock, and there's a wire loom. I hope I can show you. Is this connector. You can see the electrical tape. Oh, let you guys get focused. Yeah, this tape here. And there's a power wire, there's a ground wire that was cut, and probably that fed a small immobilizer unit somewhere behind this panel with the tag reader. And when the tag on the key was confirmed by the tag reader, it would send power to the starter circuit in the ignition lock, and then you could start a car. And I expected to find some kind of alarm system with a remote lock, and when you can sound the horn and switch on the lights by remote control, but I couldn't find any evidence of that. So in order to get the remote control system working again, I took the workshop manual and started troubleshooting from there. And this is what I found. So here's the key with a remote control transmitter built into it. There's a small button on the side, and it says here, I can show you, if my camera will focus, the lock, unlock door. There's only one button, so it's actually a toggle switch. One time you push it, the car locks, and you push it again, the car unlocks. The only way in telling what the car is doing is watching the indicators flash. When you unlock the car, they flash twice. When you lock the car, they are illuminated for a second or so. The remote door lock and unlocking system consists of two parts, namely the key and the car itself. And at first it seemed blatantly obvious why this system wasn't working, but it wasn't the battery in the key. I hope you can hear me, it's a bit noisy out. So I put a new battery in, pressed the button, but nothing was working. So I suspected there was some old wiring cuts still left in the car from the previous owner and the immobilizer / alarm system, but there never has been an aftermarket alarm system, and the immobilizer has been removed. So then I needed to test the key, and for that I needed an FM radio, and I'll show you in the next clip. To test the remote control, the transmitter in the key is fairly simple. Only thing you need is a FM radio, which I have here, and tune it to, well, this one doesn't go to 108, but for the European market you have to tune it to 108 megahertz. And keep the key, sorry, not too loud, keep the key in the proximity of the antenna and press the button. Listen. You can hear the interference of the transmitter signal of the key on the radio. So that indicates that the transmitter in the key is working. So when that's the case, the fault, let me put the volume down. When that's the case, the fault is on the car side. So we have to further investigate the wiring and electronics in the car. So now that we know that the key is working correctly, we have to look into the other part of the remote controlled door lock and unlock system, namely the car itself. And I want to start off by showing you the parts of which this system consists. So the door lock and unlock system is integrated with the car's alarm. The horn for the alarm lives down there in that corner. The main fuse is in the front fuse box in front of the expansion tank. Is this 10 amp fuse, and it's marked dome in the workshop manual. Now let's get inside. One thing that's important to know when troubleshooting is this switch. You can switch the remote control on or off. So when it's not working, you may have accidentally hit this button with your knee. Anyway, I already checked that, it's working. There's continuity. And the reason why I removed this panel, the skid panel in the driver's footwell, is that a majority of the ECUs of this car is living in here, and the one for the door and alarm, door locking system, is hiding down there somewhere. And honestly, I haven't been able to find it, but I'm sure it's there. I haven't looked further into that. There are also switches in the door that communicate with the ECU. Here is the motor for the door locking system, and it has a position sensor on there which tells the ECU in which position the door lock is in. And courtesy switches for the lights tell the system whether or not the door is locked. Oh, what's this? Oh, I have to clean up a bit. Let's step to the back. Here's the rear window. In this upper wiring is the antenna for the remote control, for the receiver, and the antenna cable runs down this pillar into the trunk, where it connects over here into the ECU for the remote control system. So let me tell you what I already did and what I found. So I followed the troubleshooting procedure in the workshop manual, and as I said, I tested the function of this button. It did work, and there are some switches over here that need to be checked. This panel is here on the bench. There's a mechanical lock for the trunk and the fuel door, that's down here. And you have to test the continuity in here too, so I did that. Let's get back to the car, and then all the fun starts testing this connector. You have to switch the ignition on and off and check for power to this unit. I already did that, but at a certain point I had to measure a 12 volt or the battery power on one of these pins and this connector, and it wasn't there. And that led to the next step, namely checking the switches in the door, and that's when I found something interesting. Important thing the system needs to know is whether or not the doors are closed and what the position of the actual lock is. So if you want to trigger the alarm, you have to set the alarm. You need to be sure that all these locks are in the lock position. If one is open, yeah, you can easily open a door and it will sound the alarm without need. So the motor for the door locking mechanism is hiding in here somewhere, I believe. I haven't found. But when the system is triggered, this should flip over, and that would tell the ECU that the left front door, the driver's door, is in the lock position. But look, nothing much happens. It doesn't respond. And when I use the main key in this panel in the driver's door, now it's locked, now it's unlocked. You can see it doesn't move much at all. So this leads me to believe that this doesn't trigger the sensor on the door motor, or the lock motor in the door, and that one of the ECUs doesn't get a response from the driver's doors. So let's get ahead and look into that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll remove the main lock in here, and there's this. I hope it shows on camera. And focus a bit, guys. Yes, you can see that back there is the motor that drives the switch itself, and it actually locks the door, and that also houses the sensor for the locked position. So I'm gonna remove that. I'm gonna do that off camera for editing's sake, and catch up with you when I have all of this out. Ugh, dirty hands. So it took me the better part of an hour to get it out, because the Windows runner, this frame with the glass window slides, was kind of in the way. These are the connectors that run to the door. The lock is out. Shows you the outside. The only thing left in is the cylinder lock, and there's a small light in here. It's illuminated when a car is locked and you pull the door handle. This one's illuminated so you can find the lock with your key. Now let me show you the parts I took out. Here is the door handle, which is all metal. And there's a small switch on here that's used to trigger the light in the door lock. And here is the lock itself. And this may be the cause for my problems. At least there is a problem in here, I'm pretty sure. This is the arm that's operating the toggle switch, and as you can see, it's a bit rusty in there. I have to clean it out a bit, take it apart. But when the central locking system is used, when you push the switch on the door, on the inside on the door panel, this one should be pushed down, and it only pushes it so far. It doesn't toggle the switch in the door itself. So I have to look into that. That's the first step to do, and see if we can find anything at fault here. And here is the connector. Before I take everything apart, I can measure continuity over those pins, make sure if the sensor and everything is working in here. And while I'm at it, I'm going to clean the door lock cylinder itself and take out this little light bulb, clean it out so it shines a bit more bright, I hope, when all is back together. Well, there you have it. The lock is entirely apart. Hope we can get it back together again. And here is the illuminated ring. Focus a bit. You can see it's very dirty. And you can see there's this pattern on the back that's full with dirt. Hence why it's not that bright in the dark. When I clean that out, it should be much brighter. And over here is this small LED that illuminates the lock itself. It's really tiny, it's not very bright, but it's an LED used in the day when they used to have incandescent bulbs to light everything. But it's hard to take apart. It took me about an hour and a half to get this out. So smart move on Lexus' part to put an LED in there. And the lock itself is soaking in solvent, because everything was very stuck inside, and I want to make sure that everything is subtle and running smooth. So giving it a bath, and when it's back together and clean, I'll show you the end result. And as if a side project isn't enough, we've got a side project within a side project. This is the transparent ring around the door lock that illuminates it, and I notice it's a bit dull here, so I got a Dremel out with a polishing tool. I'm gonna polish it a bit in order to make things perfect. Okay, focus camera. So everything is back together, and before I put it back in the car, I want to make sure everything works. Would not spend another 3 hours in filling this thing out. So I got the power supply, there's the connector, and let's see, I can see a little bit of green. Let me put a light out. Ooh. That's actually all there is to it. This is the illuminated door lock. Next up is the actual door lock itself, in which the servo motor isn't powerful enough. When the central door locking knob is pushed, it doesn't toggle the button on the door with the orange indicator. So I'm going to take this apart and see if I can find what's wrong with it, because we know for a fact there's something wrong inside this thing. So I'll do the disassembly off camera and show you how the inside looks once I get there. Well, here's the inside of the door lock completely taken apart. Here's the mechanism itself, the mechanic part, and the door lock, the door catch. And here we have the motor that locks the door and the notch that moves. And this notch, this is the arm that connects to the cylinder lock in the door. So when you turn the key and lock unlock, this one is pushed up and down and it moves this mechanism. And when you use the remote control or the central door lock knob and the driver's armrest to lock all 4 doors, these motors inside every door trigger the lock and put it in its locked or unlocked position. Important thing to know is that there's a spring-loaded gear in here that always returns to the same position. There's a small notch on there, and that pulls this lever to its locked or unlocked position. And to read the position of the door lock, there is this little slider contact that moves along with this lever, and it makes contact via this circuit board just located above the motor. And when I pull this apart, I notice this small plastic part. Actually there were 2, and one of them was stuck in the dielectric grease on this tiny circuit board. Put my finger beside it for measurement, and it was in between one of those contacts and the circuit board. So no matter what position it was in, the system couldn't read the position of the motorized door lock because this was in place. It interrupted the circuit. So that leads me to believe that the fault, the not working remote control or central door lock, is actually in this specific lock, because this came loose and this tiny piece of plastic belongs on one of those holes here and there. There's a pin going through, and in the factory they put a circuit board in place and then they melted the top, but apparently it came loose and just happened to get in the way. So that's stuff for which Lexus could have issued a recall maybe, because this is it's a design flaw. I'm surprised to find anything like this in the car. But anyhow, no Lexus dealer would have repaired this door lock. They would have replaced the entire module. So what I'm going to do now is clean things up inside here and check everything is greased well, and see if I can find a way with a small tiny screw to keep the circuit board in place. And I think once it's in place and everything is back together, I put this tiny little gasket back in, it should stay in place, and then it's a matter of just assembling it. That will cost me a couple of hours, but it's a very complicated mechanism. And then put it back in the car and see how things work. So that's the door lock reassembled. I lubricated everything inside and on the outside. I think it looks fairly clean. I cleaned the transparent housing. Doesn't look brand new, but it's okay for me. A few things I need to mention. I'm not gonna take it apart again. Inside here there's a spring, circular, that is the return spring for the catch in here. And there's a elongated spring there and a pawl that locks the door, so it prevents the catch from moving. I'll blend in the picture right now. And as you can see there, this is the upper spring over here, and this is the longer spring, and that's the lock pawl in there. You have to take them in account, and when assembling it, there's a tiny pin that falls into this groove here. You have to make sure that it falls in, otherwise you can't put the outside plate back on. So there we have it. Now I'm gonna put it back in the car, and that's the only way I can test it. I want to make sure, and I hope I can film it, is the movement of this pawl, which is driven by the servo motor, which electronically locks and unlocks the door. This is what the door lock looks on the inside. It's held in place with two bolts, one over there and one on the top. And in order to reach the upper one, you have to take the cylinder lock with the red tape on the wire. You have to take the cylinder lock off in order to access the bolt that's up there. Pretty sure you can't see it on camera, but anyway, that's in. Now I'm going to put in the door lock itself. So the door lock is back in place. I got all the hooks and connectors hooked up back inside. It's not an easy task, it's not a fun task. I hope I don't have to take it out again. Next thing I'm going to do is to connect this panel that controls the door lock and hook up the battery, and then see if this little button flips over when the door is locked, either with the button and hopefully with a remote control. I believe I've made it even worse. Oh boy. Doesn't move anything. Let's check without this hook connected. So the problem persists. When I think about it right now, I don't think I'm going to take it apart again and leave it for it is, and maybe stop fiddling around with the remote control. That still doesn't work. So I did some testing on the door, but apparently the motor isn't powerful enough anymore to operate the button. Anyway, when I use the key to lock or unlock the car, all four doors lock or unlock simultaneously, so that's what we want. The problem with the remote control still persists, and I think it has everything to do with the small circuit board inside the door. I can't get it working, and then I'm afraid I need to find a new part, which is hard to find. But anyways, with the steps I've showed you in the video so far, you now know how to take the door lock out, the the door lever out of the door and what's inside and what you can do yourself to repair. My problem still persists, so I'll button this up. I put the door panel back in and the whole shebang down there. So I had another small side project in mind for this episode, which I'm going to do next, and that's to install the side markers. And with the installment of the side markers, I want to conclude this video. But first up, let's finish this. I wish it was different, but it is what it is. So here's one of the side markers I made in one of the previous episodes. I can't exactly recall which episode it was. And to finish this episode, we're going to install them right here. What we have to do is take power from this park light, corner light here, and then run it to there. And I decided to make it fairly simple and not to install a connector or anything. Just extend the wiring loom from here to there. Fairly simple, done it before, but has an amazing effect. So let's get started. So I have a bunch of wires left from the deinstallment of the LPG installation. These used to run to the injectors over there. They're fairly long enough to attach them to here, so I'm going to reuse them. And I'm going to strip this wire, solder them in, show you how to do that, and just put electrical tape on there. That must be good enough. It's not exactly up to Lexus standard, but in my experience this will work and hold up for a long period of time. Stripping away a bit of the protective hose around here. Always be careful, especially now. What I'm going to do next is to strip a piece of the wire, at least attempt to, so I can braid the extension wire in. It's about 1 centimeter. Zoom you out a bit and relocate you over there. As you can see, I already have the red wires running from the marker to the corner indicator lamp. Let's feed this through. It wants to, and it does. Yeah, there we are. And clip them to equal length. Fed both wires through. I'm going to strip them. And what I usually do is these wires, the inner strands aren't twisted together. Try to split them in half. One of the new wires through. And then twist both together. Put on a tiny bit of flux. Not even sure this is the right one for copper wiring, but it's the one I always use. Just black electrical tape. And this tape is fairly elastic, so when you pull it, it really seals off the wires. I'm trying to get it around as far as possible up to that end. Cut the excess off if it wants to. Hope my arm is not in shot. Stick that on there. There we are. So that's one wire extended. And now it's just a matter of soldering these wire together. Only thing you have to keep in mind that you have enough clearance to pull out the entire lens assembly, so you can remove the lamp. If this were too short, you couldn't replace the bulb if needed in a decent manner. So let's create some space for ourselves. It's about here. It's a bit noisy. Hope it doesn't bother the video too much. It's time to test a new assembly just before we put everything back together. Let's see how this works. Put it just loose. Ah, this one's broken. I didn't even notice. I'm gonna get a new bulb for that, but at least that's how it looks. I like it. I like it a lot. So that's the front of the car put together for the first time in a long time. Even got a hood shot for the first time in months. Both corner lights and marker lights are in and connected. Oh, it's a bit cramped in here. So let's turn this on and see how it looks. As you can see, I put everything in here back together. Ooh, look at that. Nice. Oh, I like the glow of incandescent bulbs. Never replace those with LEDs, guys. Never do that. It's beautiful as it is from factory. And that's the corner light on the right hand side. Yeah, I'm very happy with that. Oh man, it's nice. Well everyone, that's it for this episode. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the remote control for doors working. It is what it is. I have to further investigate that and troubleshoot it a bit. Anyway, I got the marker lights running. Very happy with that. I want to thank you for watching this episode, for following me along. If you did like it, give me a thumbs up. Maybe subscribe to the channel. It would help me out, get more viewers, and inspires me to make future episodes. Anyhow, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching and see you on the next one.